Metallic Reviews, the show where I take an honest look at the harder side of music and give it an honest rating. Today, we venture deep into black metal territory to examine a band from Sweden whose name and album title don't leave any little red squiggle lines on my Microsoft Word document. Yes, it's a minor miracle, I know. It's genre mainstays Dark Funeral and their new album, We Are the Apocalypse, released March 18th on Century Media. Now, this is the band's first effort since their 2016 release, Where Shadows Forever Reign. It's a pretty substantial gap between albums. How'd they do? Let's find out. Now, let's just go ahead and address something real quick. Just get it out of the way here. Those looking for anything particularly groundbreaking, experimental, or innovative are probably going to want to move on fairly quickly. You're not going to see any fair musical progression on here. It's just not here. Now, those seeking solid black metal, on the other hand, will probably enjoy this album. While I don't consider it the peak of the genre, it still has a lot to offer. The vocals are good without venturing too far into incomprehensibility, and the backing music works in a number of ways. I appreciate how the band is willing to play around with timing. They bounce back and forth a lot. First, you're going to have this blast beat laden song, and then on the next track, it'll be slower and way more contemplative. And this is especially true on the first half of the record, which personally I consider to be better than the second half. Now, the record has some good compositions, but I think my favorite was the sixth track, Beyond the Grave. Had a nice sense of balance to it, and I really like how the band aren't unwilling to write stuff that's somewhat catchy. Sometimes black metal bands shy away from this because it's not true enough, but I think that it actually enhances what's being presented, if anything. While the songs on the album aren't the catchiest ever written, to be honest, they are at least hooky enough to keep the listener somewhat engrossed on a run-through. I also enjoy the mix of the album, and Beyond the Grave is a prime example of how well it's done. The guitars kind of take a back seat in the soundscape, and the vocals and drums kind of float along on a little musical river supported by that great backing deep guitar tone. And, considering this is a black metal album, it's a pretty torrential river. Speaking of the drumming, it's another positive on this album. It's Janne Jaloma's inaugural voyage as the group's skinsman, and he does a really good job with it. His Metal Archives profile is somewhat impressive, as he's listed as the drummer for 7 other active bands. Dude's a busy guy. But Dark Funeral is his first quote-unquote big outing, and it's nice to see that he has this platform to work with. His talent for rapid-fire blast beats, but his awareness to play around with the softer parts of the album are all very, very apparent here. Got to give him a lot of kudos for this performance. Just absolutely outstanding stuff. Now, that being said, I do have issues with the album. I do. And they lie mostly in a problem I have with a lot of black metal in general. It's repetitive as heck. Yes, they have the parts where they play around with things, but in the end, they always seem to return to that same black metal cauldron. Tremolo riffs, blast beats, and vocals as icy as a berg from the Arctic. Lather, rinse, repeat. While this album is not as guilty of it as others, it's still somewhat jarring, especially as you get towards the end of the record. Now, it's not a bad record. It's actually a good record. It's just not a great record. In light of all that, Dark Funeral's latest effort gets a 3.5 out of 5. Thank you so much for joining me. Click like and don't forget to subscribe for more metal reviews. Next week, we're going to be shifting gears very dramatically because we're going from black metal to proggy, genty stuff. Yeah, it's going to be a wild one, folks. So join me next time as we review Animals as Leaders' new album, Parrhesia.